In 1980, the Gates of Hell trilogy began with City of the Living Dead. Ridiculous dialogue, sensational gore, and genuinely great moments of horror. This film is Lucio Fulci in a nutshell. I am the Italian Horror Guy, and this is the Italian Horror Guy podcast. So, this was a very, very fun experience. Returning to this, maybe not wonderful film, but this film, after a number of years of having not watched it, in my head, this was certainly the weakest of the Gates of Hell trilogy, and that may well turn out to be the case when I do end up covering or watching the other two. I know that The Beyond is certainly the most famous or infamous one of the three, and I'm actually a big fan of The House by the Cemetery, even with the little boy's awful voice. But this film is it's interesting, right? I was reading around and found that one or two articles about the idea that this is actually the second part in a quadrilogy, including obviously Zombie Flesh Eaters, but obviously there are links. In a way, Zombie Flesh Eaters, I think, is like the godfather of this trilogy. It's not involved in it, but quite clearly this wouldn't exist without it. You know, there are scenes in this movie where there's, you know, the dead are rising, and the theme music is very, very similar to the iconic music from Zombie Flesh Eaters. So it's very clear that he was cashing in on a good thing. And I think the reference in the introduction there to, you know, this sort of being Lucio Fulci in a nutshell, or maybe personified would be just as good a word, is that he was always considered a bit of a gun for hire, rightly or wrongly, because I think he did some really genuinely like quality stuff earlier. But this was like, how can I cash in on success that I'm finding? So Zombie Flesh Eaters in a way was already a cash in on other success. It was billed, I think, in Italy as a sequel to Dawn of the Dead, which was simply not the case at all. But at the same time, he made a very, very good film. So he then sort of put together in rather quick time this trilogy. Now, part of the reason I can't conceptualize in the same sort of series of movies as Zombie Flesh Eaters is because Catriona MacColl is in all of these ones, and in some weird way it seems linked, like almost like that they're genuine sequels of each other rather than just sort of put into this similar category. But all of these three films are marked by, I think, wonderful theme music, like genuinely wonderful theme music, and a very, very clear adherence to Fulci's sort of determination to be, you know, as gory as possible. So look, these are imperfect films, and this is a very, very imperfect film. Some of the dialogue is it's laughable, to be honest. But where I think this film has a slight advantage, or is slightly better than the other two, not to say it's better overall, is that sort of, you know, that sort of idea that, they don't have to make sense because they're not they're surrealist movies. I hear that sort of talked about The Beyond in a lot of ways. And don't get me wrong, I think The Beyond is clearly the king of this trilogy. But they are still adhering too closely to general film conventions in terms of story structure and even the way, they are after visceral reactions and stuff. That to just get away with it's surrealist, so it doesn't have to make sense. Because, like, when scenes are happening, it's quite clear that there's a logical filmic like generalized filmic structure to them. So the stuff that doesn't make sense in the next two films is often like, oh, we've just come out of this room in this entirely different place, and it's like, well, it's not that it isn't interesting or even funny or whatever. It's that the films don't necessarily earn it. Whereas I think this film simply plants itself in the area of ridiculousness from the start. It has a vibe of anything can happen. Like, so going to the very start of the thing. Well, first I go to the very, very start of the film. Um, I think that the scream is actually from Catriona McCall. But regardless, what a great scream! Like, this film, uh, and you've heard me say it 1,000 times, but Italian horror films, like the great ones, are always influenced by wonderful score, to the point that you couldn't take the score away and expect it to be anywhere near as good a film. This film almost lives with its score. You take the score away from this film, and there's not a lot left, because this, unlike probably a lot of horror films, even particularly gory ones. This film needs its great scenes, its great moments of horror, its visual moments of horror. Um, this, to probably a greater extent than many or any of his other films, is that criticism of like everything that's happened is just a vehicle for our gory scenes. This accusation could absolutely be leveled at this film, but one point that I would make is that they're bloody good scenes. So, but of course, it requires music. So we hear the scream, and then the music will like, it's great. I might even use that for the intro music now that I think about it. So you might well have already heard it by the time you're listening to me rabbit on. And there are a number of scenes in this film that take place in graveyards, and there's fog and stuff, and like, oh, it's just so horror film. Really, it's look, it's just a great scene. I think, you know, Catriona McCall is probably slightly above her station in these films, I reckon. I don't know if she went on to have an unbelievable career or anything, but in terms of like, she just feels like she's the star of the show in all of these movies, and everyone else is just sort of there. So she looks genuinely stressed out during this opening scene, while the seance is happening. The visuals of the priest walking around the graveyard, it's he's very well cast, but it's just magnificent stuff. The daytime element of it creates that sense of looming drama, because like, horror happening in the day is really cool, but I like the way it builds from day to night. And generally speaking, things are more horrifying at night in this movie than they are during the day. But it's like, it creates an aura of horror in this film, and also, Fulci really did seem to get a kick out of killing priests in horrific ways, but and indeed using priests as murderers in different films. So it's a pretty it's a pretty the opening couple of scenes emphasize that on the one hand, it's great from a horror perspective. This film, it's not great from a scene construction perspective, as in dialogue and that kind of thing. So, as I said before, I'm happy to look past dubbing to a point, but when you have a mixture of the voice doesn't match the face and it's poorly dubbed on top of it, geez, it's distracting. The seance lady, the main one, she's well cast in terms of face, and who knows, maybe the Italian version it works, but she's dubbed so badly. Maybe the voice itself sort of goes with her, but look, the dialogue that that she gets given, there's the ridiculous scene. So the seance is happening in New York, right? And I think it's fair to say that Fulci was never entirely able to capture American places quite in the way that he wanted to. And partly that is where dialogue hurts because, you know, this particular scene is meant to seem like a New York jerk cop. Um, but so there's that guy who I think appears in Manhattan Baby as well, who's the cop, and he's like, "You expect me to believe that blah blah blah," and so who the fuck is this guy? So part of the problem with this scene is that it's clearly for exposition, like they're just sort of filling in the gaps. He goes and asks her about the Book of Enoch and all this stuff that's going on, and he's being ridiculous. And at one point, the seance lady like has a go at him and says, "You're like a cartoon cut out of a cop," and it's like, yeah. The problem with this though is that that's in the movie as well, like, and if he's meant to look ridiculous, she looks way more ridiculous. So if that's the film winking and nodding at us, then credit where it's due, but I'm not sure it is due. And she also says the line. I think I've written it down. I don't actually know if it's to the cop or not, but she says, tremendously awful things are happening. Wait, far away, I think. Tremendously awful things are happening. Things that would shatter your imagination. What prick got away with writing that and that ending up in the movie? It's just so lame. Just show this tremendously awful and they shatter your imagination. Like it's the generic fucking thing that you could possibly say. Very disappointing that got into the movie, but whatever. It adds to the camp of the whole thing. So speaking of adding to the camp of the whole thing, we then cut to we're just gonna to Bob. That's right, Bob. Giovanni Lombardo Radice, the man that I once got in contact with, as I've said way too many times on the show, to email him about a scene from the house on the edge of the park. He's just Radiceing away in this film. I really think he was great in this little era. He's a very familiar face in this era of Italian horror films. Obviously, a couple of Deodato films, and I really like his character in this film. As in, I wouldn't want to be friends with him, but I do often reflect. Well, not often. I have reflected that, you know, was there, say, with an initial script of this film, was there like a more ambitious sort of bringing together of all the stories? Because now, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that it doesn't work. I'm just saying that if you take Bob and those weird old men at the pub, one of which ends up murdering the hell out of Bob, if you take them out of the movie, it doesn't affect the events of the movie at all. So, again, that's not to say that it's not good that they're in there, because it just is an extra, it's an extra sort of line of stuff going on. I think the problem with it, though, is like, in a way, I think it would be better if these scenes actually didn't have their own internal storyline. Now, don't get me wrong; they don't have a particularly big storyline. It's just guys talking about Bob occasionally and saying how bad and evil he is. But he's bad and evil, and then the opportunity exists for one of them to murder him, and boy, does he! But it's like, in the context of a film trying to establish that bad things are happening, you know. So there's almost no logic at all in this film to what are the capabilities of the zombies. What exactly does it mean if the gates of hell remain open? All of that crap. But like, by having this little storyline, even if you could say, oh, well, this is the problem, the people have done it or done which are terrible, like Bob's terrible, but the other people are terrible as well. Like, I get it from that perspective, but by having a proper actual story, well, arguably not that fleshed out, pardon the pun, you miss out on just like Bob isn't really framed as a character. He's just a guy doing stuff, but they try to build some kind of weird character around him. Anyway, that's enough of that rant. But one of the things the film does is it makes him so fucking unlikable that even though he is actually quite a victim by the time he dies, you're like, well, do I care? So he's all in some house, and this is the other thing, right? He's walking around in this uh, dusty, like sort of dust storm, foggy place. There's a house, and he goes into the house. First, I just want to say this is just brilliant camera work. The whole thing, it just looks magnificent. Very horror film. For some reason, he's all pale. He looks like a zombie. Bit of a sign of things to come. But he goes into this dodgy house, and there's this blow up doll that he just throws on the floor, and it blows up, and it's like this sex doll, and he's like giving his Radice face. He's all here, and I was like, why is this guy here? And like, what an awful setting to be doing this stuff in. And then he looks over, and there's this real disgusting like worm blood crap on the floor, which is quite in the ilk of zombie flesh eaters. And it's like, okay, so bad stuff's happening, but Bob's not necessarily evil. I think the other thing as well, I might get to it as we go along, but it's not clear if Bob is like a rapist or whatever, or the townsfolk just think he is because he's weird and a little bit, seems at least like a bit of a sex pest. Anyway. Also, it's worth noting that body that he sees, did I say it was a body? I said it was blood and worms. It's a body. It is a very fucking well done piece of gore. It seems like a child, like a little, with very little legs. But anyway, we won't make any more of that than we need to. So, again, with the dubbing, with the dialogue, the translations, all of that kind of stuff, it's often difficult to assess whether the things that come out poorly are like deliberately poor and they're being funny, or like they just didn't put much work into the script. I suspect it's a bit of both, but on any given occasion, it's hard to tell. So we're introduced to the guys who I don't know if any of them have names, but there's these three guys, or three or four guys, sort of getting around the bar at any given time of the movie, and they're having this little conversation, and there's a mirror in the bar, and it cracks really badly. Like, it looks like it's been punched 4 times, or 3 or 4 times. And I mean, I suspect that is what they did, or something like it, to get the effect. But like, and everyone's like, "Oh, that's no good." And then one of them's like, "Oh, well, ever since the priest died, weird things have been happening." And it's like, yeah. And again, this is part of what hurts the surrealism of the film, when they just show us behind the curtain and they give us such lazy expositional dialogue like that. But anyway, it's one of those moments in a film where you're like, if that actually happened, you'd react a bit more than, oh, that is weird. It's like, no, it's impossible. Like, and the bartender's like, oh, it would have been a truck that drove past. It's like, what? Well, a truck drove past and it just completely crunched the mirror in 4 different places. Absolute garbage. And then it gets even more ridiculous. I think some of the guys disappear, and then like the whole of a wall just cracks and like half it falls away, and it's very, very much not a real wall. But the bartender's just like, oh, it's bad construction or something. It's like, mate, your wall just broke in half and you watched it happen. So maybe he's in a bit of denial. But anyway, then we're introduced to the lesser 2 characters of the film, which are, hang on, they're played by Janet Agron and Carlo DeMajo, and it's always good to have Janet Agron in the films because she just looks wonderful. Jerry with a G for Carlo DeMajo, and he's like a psychologist or psychiatrist or whatever, and she's having a very Freudian discussion with him, and there is this Freudian stuff going on. The killer in House by the Cemetery is Dr. Freudstein. So there you go. But she's doing some real generic stuff. She's like, when she was 8, she wanted to marry her father, but now she hates men or something. And then a cat scratches her, and it's all a little bit, I don't know, Edgar Allan Poe-esque. I don't know. But it's one of those things that I think Fulci liked to put these moments in his films as sort of digs at both psychiatry or psychology, and also digs at like tropes within horror films. I mean, it at least gives some context for why these two are in the film, like as in a relationship to each other. But honestly, how redundant are these two characters? They're just a bad version of the main two characters. Like that is a part of the film that is very, very poorly thought out. They just are essentially doing the same thing, and then they meet up with the other main characters. Like it's really lame. It's really lame. They're good. Like I like all the actors. They're fine, but like goodness me, it's very, very lame. So then we get to the next. I think really, really great moment of horror, even if it is a bit stupid. So, we're we're at the cemetery, and there's two blokes who are total jerks, and they're just not. That they just bury people in the ground, but you clearly, the film's trying to evoke a sort of separation from death or some bullshit like that. Like they don't care. And one of them's Piri Perkinen, who was also in Cannibal Holocaust. He was in about 3 films in the early 80s, and that was it for him. And he's just looking like a jerk. Like you can tell he was a jerk in real life as well. Um, and, the cop shows up, and here's the actor's name. In fact, also Peter Bell is the character, and Christopher George. I think he died just a couple of years after this, but he was in, I think, quite a few films of this ilk. He's got a really good aura about him. Cool actor, and I think he dubs his own voice, which is always good. And he's just curious about the girl. I'm just curious about the girl. Like, hey, get out of here. It's really lame. But like, this is where the film probably loses itself a little bit. Again, yes, surrealism, that's one thing, but they also try to put things in some kind of logical place. But like, so they just put him there. They don't explain why he's there. Like, why is he there? Oh, I'm just curious about this girl. What are you curious? As in, okay, you're curious, whatever, that's fine. But why did you need to go and see her coffin? It's almost as if the film knew that she was going to need some breaking out of that coffin. So that scene where he's axing his way into the coffin, that's great stuff. Terrifying. It's suspenseful to the point of tediousness before he actually accepts that she is alive in there. Because he's like looking back at the coffin, she's scratching on it, she's moving around, and he thinks maybe he can hear something. Oh, maybe I can hear something. He's got a real maybe. What is that look on his face? But the wind's blowing and stuff, and the film's really at pains to emphasize that. And eventually he does. It's worth mentioning that as much as we enjoy the terror of it all when he's axing her in the face, or near the face, he already knows that she's in there. So surely he doesn't like. He's not a maniac outside of this moment in the film. So again, almost as if they just wanted him to act out of character so we could get a particular visual. He knows that she's in there and she's screaming, so she's obviously got some air still. Maybe stick your axe not where her head might be, you idiot. So he's doing that for a while, and eventually she gets out. There's that great line. I think Mary Woodhouse is Catriona MacColl's name. Actually, I'll just confirm that. I think that's the case. Yes, Mary Woodhouse, and you know, what did you see? And she's all, the city of the dead, the living dead. It's just, I don't know. Just had to acknowledge it. It's a great line. So the cop's a bit skeptical, as in Peter Bell's a bit skeptical, as you might be. Although he has seen her come back to life. It's never made clear. Again, it's quite funny. It's never made clear why, if she wasn't dead, that. Oh, I've just had a thought, but I'll get to that in a moment. Why, if she wasn't dead, that she was buried? But maybe, in reference to the no living body, no body will ever be able to rest peacefully again, or whatever. Maybe she is a dead body. Maybe she's a zombie for the whole movie. Wow. Nothing about it ever indicates that that's true, by the way. But, you know, I'm doing the work on behalf of the filmmakers, but I'm all for that. So, where are we? Yeah. So, I think the more that we get towards Dunwich, or the more of it that we see, the better the film gets. Because there's lots of excuses to have uh, wonderful horror shots. So there are those shots, a few shots that we get of like fucking John and the little area that he lives. This is just the most awful name ever. You're not calling a child John. And if you are, don't have a child. But it's got those sort of New York style little stair things that go into the houses or apartments or whatever. And one, like I've said, that I think Fulci struggled to depict American places in a particularly effective way, and this seems to be using New York. But here it's great because it's all foggy. It looks a bit like New York, but it looks like Dunwich, right? It looks as they wanted Dunwich to look. And to be clear, I think that criticism, if it is, of him not being able to depict American cities particularly well, that does add to the uncanny and the quality that these films are going for, whether it's deliberate or not. So look, just looks magnificent. Then we cut to a shot of Bob, and he's with a girlfriend, I suppose, very good looking. And I think a zombie shows up, and he's just out of there. He doesn't give a shit. He's just saving his own life, and the girl gets killed. So now, next moment of wonderful horror. So for some reason, Michele Soavi's in this film, and his character's name is Tommy Fisher. And he's with Rosie Calvin, who's played by Daniela Doria of New York Ripper fame. And they're sort of making out in the car a bit or whatever. And again, I don't know to what extent this. I mean, it's not to be taken overly seriously. That's clear. But I don't know how seriously the moment is meant to be taken. Where she's all, I feel like someone's watching us, and he's all, oh, nah. Here, I'll turn the lights on, just to prove it. And he turns the lights on, and there's just this priest just hanging, and his face is all bloodshot, and it's actually pretty fucking funny because, like, yeah, not the big strong man now, are you, Michele Soavi? But then we just get a moment of Fulcian gore and glory, and it's just perfect. The priest just, he's staring at Daniela Dore. It's worth mentioning, the two deaths that she gets, like, if you'd watched the New York Ripper first, you're like, well, fuck, that was pretty brutal. And then you said, but hold your horses. The death she got in City of the Living Dead was significantly, significantly worse. That'd be hard to believe. But so she's sitting there in the car, and the priest is just staring at her, and her eyes start bleeding. A scene that, or a concept that Tarantino used or stole. He had a habit of doing that with Fulci movies. Um, and then her mouth's, she's like, it's horrible, and like it's really horrible. And then there's like her intestines and organs start falling out of her mouth. And whilst there's a scene where it actually does go too far, where there's a lot falling out after plenty already have, and you can see that it's like a prosthetic face. Now, I suspect that their strategy here was you've seen so much of this happening already that you're really focused on the gore, not so much her face. But this scene, I just don't think it needs to happen. And also, it does make you wonder just how many internal organs she actually had, because fuck me, a lot fall out. So it's fallen out, but in the early parts of this scene, you can see her blinking. Now that is actually fucking brilliant, right? Because I think she had some kind of she did have something in her mouth that was like fucking tripe or something. I don't know, that she was pushing out. So like, it looks disgusting. That can't have been much fun to film. In fact, it's not really a surprise that she didn't remain an actress for very long, given the shit that she had to do. And so it's the most disgusting, over the top, insulting death. Like, she's just an empty body. There's nothing inside. But to add insult to this, fucking Tommy Fisher, Michele Suave, is just sitting there staring while this happens. He's not trying to do anything. He's just looking like, I can't believe it. So fucking save her. She's your girlfriend, you stupid prick. And then he just gets his brains just grabbed out of the back of his head. Now, this is one of the most comical elements of this film, right? Like, it's genuinely funny that there are some unbelievably creative deaths, right? Like, really, really creative. Now, each given death is either super creative or people getting their brains just grabbed from the back of their heads. And it happens like, I think, 3 or 4 times. It's like, guys, it didn't even have to be that creative. You've already had the tripe falling out of someone's mouth. You've had the fucking drill go through Bob's head. You don't need every death to be... Like, someone could just get shot. But it's like, no, we want it to look good. What if we have brains being grabbed out of the back of someone's head? And then an hour later, it's like, oh, what are we going to do with Peter Bell? What if a guy who... So what if a girl who's had the brains grabbed out of the back of her head is now a zombie, and she grabs the brains out of the back of his head? I think that's the order of events. And it's like, guys, for a film noted rightly for its gory creativity, they didn't show a hell of a lot of creativity in doing all that stuff, did they? Okay. So, Radice's girlfriend is found dead, and there's some generic conversations, fairly insensitive, given the dad's just right there, about how Radice is a bit of a sex pest or something. Again, it's pretty vague. And then at first the cop seems to just be like listening and being like, whatever. And then suddenly he's like, that kid's going to fry. Mark my words. It's like the people in this town, especially the middle-aged to older men, are just the fucking biggest idiots in the world. So, I'll just acknowledge the... Yeah, so there's more conversations about the girls that Bob's been talking to amongst the people. There's that bloke at the morgue who's like putting lipstick on one of the girls, and he just looks like a vampire. I just thought I'd better acknowledge that. I might get to it in my notes. I can't remember if he dies. I assume he does. So I think a relatively solid element of these films is like when either one of the two couples, even though they're not couples, are sort of traveling around together in cars, having general conversations about what's happening. But it's sort of undermined by the fact that there's multiple of these, so it's hard to see what the information that you get out of Janet Agron and Carla DeMajo, we couldn't have just got out of the better two. But so there's this. So they're driving around. So there's it's Peter and it's Mary, right? Our favourite two. We love them. They're great. They have a bit of chemistry. It's not quite like her chemistry with David Warbeck in the Beyond, but it's reasonable. So they're having a bit of an argument about the situation, or a discussion. At first, she's saying everything, and he's skeptical. But he's like, all right, for the sake of argument, I believe you. And then at one point, I don't know if they have a tire problem or something, but they get out of the car, and she says that she's hungry, and he's all. Now, keep in mind, Mary's the one who's saying how bad all this is. Like, the gates of hell are going to open. And if they do, we're fucked. Right? And she's like, I'm hungry. And he's like, I've got a lollipop in the car. And she gets annoyed. And then he's like, oh, why should we panic? Because according to you, we've got less than 24 hours and then we're all screwed. And she's like, come on, not now. Let's go and check out the local cuisine. And she smiles. And he smiles back at her and they just get in the car. And it's like... These two uniquely have the ability to save the future of the world, and they've got less than 48 hours to do it. And they're like, yeah, but it would be nice if we just went and got some food right now. And just the way that Mary's like, please not now. So I don't want to deal with this right now. No, you can fucking deal with it in 2 days when the world's over, you fucking idiot. So it's at that point the film is absolutely taking the piss. And the audacity of it to do it is just fucking brilliant. It really, really is. All right. Okay, so then we eventually move on to the lesser couple, Jerry and Sandra. Fuck, they're so uninteresting, these two. But they have a scene of some interest. Sandra calls him up, and she's telling him some stuff, and he assures her she's not crazy. And they go get something to drink. And there's this scene where, like, they see the old woman, who's died, and she's like lying on the floor, almost evocative of like Invasion of the Body Snatchers. And he sees her, and he's stunned, right? He's stunned, and no part of him goes, I bet someone put her here. They walk off to another part of the house, and then they come back, and she's gone. And he's like, oh, someone must have taken her away. And Sandra thinks that she might have walked away, and it's all, oh, don't be ridiculous. It's like, mate, you just acknowledged this before. But now you're just being a jerk. So this is part of the problem that Jerry is like, he's handy up to a point, but he's just a bit boring. He's just a bit nothing. It's so annoying that he survives and Peter doesn't. Let's say felt that like both couples had to be represented in the survivors. I don't know. And so at the end of the scene, there's that really cool shot of like the decayed zombie feet, like I guess at the bottom of a cabinet or something. That's really cool. And then I don't think the film quite makes enough of it, but that shot where there's like all those shards of glass in the wall and blood coming down from them, that's great horror stuff. Now, again, this film has given itself permission to just do ridiculous stuff. And boy, does it take advantage. And it's given itself that permission by the plot essentially being gates of hell are opening or opened and any kind of evil shit can happen. So basically they can just put on the screen whatever they feel, and that's fine because that's in keeping with what we're doing. But that's okay because if you actually live up to it, then good stuff. Well done. So And then we cut to Mary and Peter again, and they're talking to a priest, because of course they are again in the day, building into the drama, and they're trying to get to Dunwich, which is really hard to get to without Google Maps in the early '80s, apparently. And he says it's pretty difficult to find. And they ask him how, and he's like, "I just take down." He's like, "Take this road, and then there's a left somewhere." Doesn't sound that fucking difficult to find. So I think the longer it goes on, the more it's like, yeah, this film's taking the piss a little bit. But there's no reason for it. Like, there's no reason to be like, it's really hard to find, and then it's very unbelievably easy to find. Mm. So, all right. So I'm realizing now as I go through this that there's a lot of moments that require pause for the pure, brutal, and glorious horror of it all. So uh, I think Bob is a little bit pathetic and uh, sympathetic in his scene when he dies. So he's in a car, and like in someone's garage. Ironically, the father of someone who doesn't like him. Sorry, the father doesn't like him, but he knows of him. But anyway, he's in that car, and then a girl who I don't think we've seen before comes and like puts some little alcohol down her pants, and she notices Bob in the car. I don't know if the alcohol thing's like to imply that, maybe some of the girls that he's done this stuff with are a bit bad or as well or something. Anyway, I think she offers him the drink, and then the dad comes in and he pushes the daughter away, and I think she just runs out. And then he's throwing Bob around, and it's semi-convincing how he throws him, and he accidentally turns the powered or the drill on. I don't know if it's a power drill. I think. Anyway, it's a drill, and he that moment. He looks at Bob, he looks at the power drill, and you can just see something snaps in his mind, and he thinks, "Oh, well, of course. How could I possibly not stick this guy's head or this power drill directly through this guy's head?" Now, it's got to be said, this scene is very well shot. The terror, if there's one thing Fulci was good at, it was showing a sharp, murderous device in slow motion and then sticking it into someone's head. Did it very well in Zombie Flesh Eaters. He does it again here. Wonderful. My only criticism of it is Bob doesn't. It's pretty clear to Bob that his life is at stake here, and he doesn't seem overly. He's scared, but he's not really fighting as much as I would advise him to. And very slowly, his head gets moved towards the drill, and then it gets put through the drill, and it's fucking difficult to watch. It's just the prosthetics are amazing, and I think one of the very funny thing about how it's shot is it goes through his head or into the side of his jawline, and he's screaming for a bit until it gets far enough in until he's dead, and then the dad keeps pushing it through, and there's a shot of seeing it push through the other side, and it's like the film saying he's not dead until it comes all the way through, which is very much not true, but this obviously gives us with the final shot of his head just lying there with a drill through it, which I don't think the film does entire justice to. We need a good 5 or 10 seconds of that, and I think we only get 1 or 2. So that's a little bit disappointing, but I'm not gonna hang them for it. It's a fucking good scene. So eventually, Mary and Peter find the graveyard, and it's getting dark, and it just looks fucking great. It really does look great. There's fog in there. It's scary. And it's going. It's getting dark. It's sort of late-ish, right? And there's fog in front of their faces that really looks like there's some kind of fan devices under them that's blowing it there. Bit of some of the dialogue's really lame here. It's hard to tell if they're in a trance or it's just shit writing or both or an accident or deliberate. Then I think the film reveals clearly the silliness of having these dual narratives of these couples, because Jerry just walks into the graveyard um, whilst they're about to leave, um, and they're all, oh, we've got information you won't believe, and he's like, oh, I'm about ready to believe anything at this point, blah blah blah. And then they cut to a room, and they do that thing where like some kind of dialogue, like "Wow, I can't believe it" or something, revealing, so we don't have to hear the story again, which is great. But like, it's not. Jerry doesn't seem to give them any information, so they don't collaborate. So then I'm just like, honestly, was there an initial bigger aim or different aim with the plot or the script that they just didn't live up to here? Because it's not clear why Bob is in the movie or any of those people. And it's probably even less clear why Jerry and Sandra are in the film, because they're just also people in it that aren't the ones that we like. So it's really, really bizarre. Anyway, I guess it means that when the maggots start flying through the window, there's four people to take maggots to the face, which is always great. Maggots, I don't think there's a single person on the planet that enjoys watching a good maggot scene. So that goes on for a while, probably too long. I do enjoy the shot of just the millions of maggots on the floor. And then there's that. They get the phone call and Jerry like has a little hanky or something, and he like wipes some maggots off the phone to pick it up. I think it's great. It's so funny. It just looks so funny. I do like the fact that he had his little hanky there, or else he would have been in a little bit of trouble. Um, so we're pretty much in just like in like all out horror mode at this point, right? With only brief breaks in between. Uh, I think that shot, as awful as John as a concept is because of his name, I think that moment where like I think he's the one that calls Jerry and he's explaining what happened, and like you can see this nice little um, milk and bread. It's almost like a scene from Psycho, with Norman's fever dream. And then there's like shots of blood just dropping into the milk. Fuck, that looks good. It just looks good. And John's fucking horrified. Um, Great stuff. Really destroys that sense that everything is hunky dory because the table looked good, but been brutalized. I think he explains that his sister Emily killed his parents and was eating them. That's pretty funny. Um, let's see where we are. Yeah. And as we're into this phase of the film, we're beginning to get more of that that theme, that real. It's got sort of medieval vibes to it. Like as they're sort of panning across the shots of the staircase, the little staircases going into the houses. That music will build, and then there'll be scenes where dead are rising from the ground, and it's really good. There's also that shot in the funeral home with the music playing that shows that all the coffins are empty. That's good stuff. That's where this film is definitely worthwhile. Um, so we eventually see John with Sandra, and they're just look. I don't know if this moment's good or bad. Like, it's bad because it emphasizes the redundancy of Sandra. But so they're walking up the stairs, and then we see a very, very disgusting zombie under the stairs. But it's a shot that's sort of like, this zombie's going to be a threat in a few minutes type of film language. But so then when we cut to Sandra, we sort of assume that they're going to go inside. But I genuinely jumped because I forgot that this happened, that she just appears and rips the brains out of her head. And because the zombies can just disappear and reappear wherever they want, depending on the shot that the film wants. And then she's dead, and then John runs away. And it's like, well, fuck, I thought Sandra was going to come in handy at some point. She does come in handy at the end, but only after she's dead. Um, so he runs off. He gets a few zombies appear. And there's that shot where Michele Suave's up on like a bridge or something, and he jumps down, and he like just lands on his feet really well, and he's sort of giving him this side eye. He's like, I'm Michele Suave, and I'm here to eat you, little boy, if I can be bothered. Like, it's just a really funny expression. I feel like Michele Suave could have got into acting purely because of his face. Like, you can do so much with it. So a really expressive face. He did terror very well. He was quite he was sort of evil he was evil in Demons. Just a good person to have around the Italian horror scene from the sort of early 80s on. I think eventually it's the John's sister comes in. So then the remaining three go into the graveyard, and it's now super dark, and the music's going, and it's just like, yeah, this is great. And there's those. I'm okay. I haven't actually made a big enough note of this. In fact, I haven't made any note of it at all. It's not just the music. The actual audio in general in this film is fantastic. I know I made a bit of a mockery of the wind that Peter Bell couldn't hear through early in the film when Mary was in a coffin, but it does sound amazing, this film. And the sort of unclear animal sounds that are happening while they're in the graveyard. Then there's this rustling happening. I think part of the point is like this idea that the gates of hell are opening. We don't know what awful things are in hell, but we know that they're awful. They really do that well. And so the aim of the characters in the film is to not allow All Saints Day to happen so they can close the gates of hell. And then in this scene, Mary's all, guess what? It's All Saints Day, which means that they are now opened, or they now can't be closed or something. So like, that's it. You're all fucked. But the film doesn't really play it that way. They just keep going. So anyway, yeah. Then there's a scene. There's a scene in the pub again, and finally all the pub idiots get murdered, I think. They're lengthy scenes. That's a lengthy scene, I should say. Michele Suave's in there as well. And Bob's in there as well, which is great. The boys teaming up to murder some people. I'm just making the mental connection now that it's Bob killing all those people that were saying bad shit about him. And in hindsight, there is a shot of him, like an extended shot of him doing this. And maybe the film's going, yeah, that's what you get for being mean to Bob. And there's a typical police bulletin of emergency, sort of Night of the Living Dead inspired, Texas Chainsaw Massacre inspired type thing. Really, really cool. While Bob is having a bit of a munch on one of the bloke's faces. Yes. Right, yes. Okay. So where Janet Agron or Sandra finally does come in handy is when they've climbed into the tomb, and she just appears in there with them. I guess she has climbed down, and her face is just looking very. She's a very, very good looking zombie. It's fair to say. We can't see the back of her head, which has had some brains ripped out of it, but she's appearing, and it's actually acted quite well, this scene. Like the way Peter and Mary look at each other, like, oh, this is sad, and Jerry's more sad. What isn't made clear, and this is such a bizarre element of this film, is that the two couples aren't actually couples. So it feels like there are significant stakes. Like, okay, this scene is very, very obviously Fulci just doing the Loretta Gay thing again that he did in Zombie Flesh Eaters. Like, it's the same scene. except in that film, uh, when the two main characters that also aren't a couple look at each other and then look at the guy is actually was in a relationship with her, so he's sad. So they're just doing the scene again, except in that one it has stakes, whereas in this one, it's just his client, although he's probably in love with her because it is a young Janet Agron. And then she just appears behind Peter's head and pulls his brains out, and then I think, and then we see some rats eating it. That's pretty brutal. But then we're fucking stuck with Jerry and Mary, which it only just occurred to you now they sort of rhyme. And I'm like, what? Why are we left with these two? Why couldn't Jerry have died? We don't really like Jerry, but Jerry's still alive to our chagrin. And then they go into the I think what's meant to be the actual tomb, or maybe they're all already past that. Yeah. Yes, they wander through this area that looks very much like Shelob's lair, but almost on cocaine. Like there's more cobwebs and more dead people, and they're just plowing through there. And they see and the music's really building up, and behind them are these bodies that are getting up off the ground. Again, one of my favorite things about Fulci zombie films is that the zombies, they're fucked. Like in Zombie Flesh Eaters, they're like old and slow, and like they really committed to the makeup, and they wanted the film to be memorable for the zombies, and they do it very well in this film because they're like decayed / almost skeletal. Some of them are. So they're just cool zombies. I think they're better zombies, certainly than Dawn of the Dead, but probably even Night of the Living Dead as well. And then the priest appears, and he's trying to make Mary cry, with the blood in the eyes. And again, this happens for a while, so I do wonder if again there's some kind of like, she's been brought over to the other side by him or whatever. Until eventually, and the zombies are like surrounding them really painfully slowly, until eventually Jerry's just like, well, fuck this, and he picks up a big crucifix that was very conveniently there, and just drives it through sort of the midriff area of the priest, and you can see a shot where it's very clearly he's got a very, very long stomach area, almost as if they didn't stick it through the actual actor's stomach. And then there's a big hole in him, and he catches on fire, and then all the other zombies catch on fire. Don't ask me. I guess it's some kind of hell thing. And then the music's all do, 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 and it's all victorious. And they climb out, and then John sees them, and again, and he's like so excited to see them. They're okay. One of the problems with this film is that it doesn't quite draw the connections between the characters that it wants to. So, actually, I just quickly need to mention on that note, I can't remember if it's after they've killed the priest or before he appears, but they like look up, and I think it is just before the priest appears, and they can like see a way out. Although it makes me think, why did they go in there in the first place? Right? Like, do they, or is it whatever? And then they look at each other like they're gonna kiss, and then they don't, either because I think they might be distracted by a zombie or something. And it's like, no, these two don't know each other. Why isn't Peter still alive? Or kill Mary and have Sandra there, and at least it would be like, it would make sense. But they genuinely look like they're gonna kiss. I don't know if it's meant to be like that, if it's more humor. And then. So they come out, and you're like, well, why'd you go in the first place? There's some cops, and John's all, oh, you're still alive or whatever. And he runs at them, and then they start looking at each other sheepishly. And then he slows down, and the sound and the music's all ominous, and then this weird cracking thing happens, this cartoon cracking thing happens over the screen, and the movie ends. And it's like, what? I don't actually know what the end was trying to say. Is it this cool surrealist thing? Oh, it's open to interpretation. Is it the John is a zombie? Have they just realized that they're in hell or something because there's a child running at them? I don't know. I'm very confused, but that's okay. The plot is not to be made a hell of a lot of sense of, even though it does have the makings of a plot that makes sense, but then they don't really follow through with that. Final thoughts. Ridiculous dialogue, some poor dubbing, not overly coherent or cohesive, but well more than its fair share of genuinely memorable horrific horror scenes. So overall, for mine, it's a tick. Not that that's necessarily the purpose of the podcast, but I hope you've enjoyed this. I know I have. Join me next month for a discussion of the second installment in the Gates of Hell trilogy, The Beyond. But until then, I'm the Italian Horror Guy, and this has been the Italian Horror Guy podcast.